Welcome to Soul Elevation, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin. Get ready for an amazing episode here with Jessica Taylor. I felt such a resonance with everything she spoke about, and this is a really special episode for me as she just delivered synchronicity after synchronicity for me personally. We continued talking for a while afterwards, and she continued to wow me with how relevant specific things she was sharing off the cuff were to me. It was the type of thing she would never have the opportunity to know ahead of time. I felt a deep connection with Jessica, and I'm so excited for you to connect with her through this episode too. Jessica Taylor is an intuitive channel, energy translator, and spiritual guide dedicated to helping others reconnect with their multidimensional essence. She shares transmissions from higher consciousness, including the Pleiadians, offering insight into humanity's awakening and the energetic shifts shaping our collective ascension. Blending grounded wisdom with cosmic perspective, Jessica bridges ancient knowing and modern awakening, empowering others to trust their intuition, align with higher frequencies, and live from their true light. So before we start, I'd love to invite you to explore the many offerings waiting for you at karagoodwin.com. You'll find my book, Your Authentic Awakening, a collection of free guided meditations and other resources to support you wherever you are on your spiritual path. You can discover upcoming summits and workshops designed to connect you with like-hearted souls and expand your consciousness in real time. And I really appreciate your support with the show. The algorithms really favor the shows where people are liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. So please know that your active participation helps to bring high vibe content like this to the forefront, allowing it to affect more people. And now enjoy this episode. Welcome, Jessica. I'm so excited to meet you and to have you here on Soul Elevation. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I want to start by talking about the connection that you have with the Pleiadians and other higher consciousnesses. How did that come about for you?
So the connection with the Pleiadians initially came through because I was running a group meditation, which went on for several years, and it was throughout that time that I started to get messages from them to begin with through these meditations, so I could feel the energy come in. And as time went by, I would ask where they were from, what was the kind of connection, what was the purpose. And they kind of let me know throughout that process that they were going to, at some point, if I would consent to it, they wanted to use me to speak, essentially. Like, could they come in, could they use me for communication, which I was fine with. I was excited about. I'd done a lot of spiritual work up to that point. I'd done some conventional mediumship, so I kind of, knew the gist. But this was a different way of working with that. And I think that there are more people coming online as channelers, starting to kind of awaken to that ability, which I think we all have, but it's coming through now. And there's a connection with the Pleiadians at the moment, as well as some of the other star systems, because they know that this is such a turning point for humanity in terms of our consciousness. And for reasons which we can get into later, they want to help us to kind of reach that higher state, because it essentially, that expansion creates a benevolent environment for everything in the universe, not just for here on our planet. And I think that a lot of the Pleiadians, the Lyrans, and the Sirius and Orion system, they have a lot of connection to previous events that have gone on in civilizations before. And it's like we're at a point now where that's being mirrored, and we're going through a similar kind of process. So it's almost like a chance for the karmic loop to be corrected and allowed to flourish.
Oh, there's so many questions I have in everything that you just said. First of all, what you just said about the karmic loop and that we've kind of been through this before, and it's a chance for with previous civilizations. Are you talking about previous Earth civilizations or previous galactic civilizations, or both?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, specifically in this instance, with Earth, because we have the times of Atlantis and Lemuria, and that seems to be what's really kind of coming back. Like some of the themes that people through regression or through, meditation and making that connection have talked about are definitely being mirrored on our platform at the moment, and how we start to move through that. But whereas with Atlantis, that was things that were happening towards the end of the highest point of consciousness in that era. It's like it's happening at the beginning for us here. So we've got that opportunity to work through those so that we can go into that state of higher consciousness, rather than be in higher consciousness and then fall from that, which is not what we
Mm.
want to experience.
Ooh, I love that perspective. I haven't really thought about that before. That we're kind of starting, yeah, that mirror. I mean, and then it really is kind of a mirror in that
Mm,
way. You know what I mean? It really feels the way that you're talking about it, like we're looking at this reflection because the mirror is that kind of inverse of
yeah,
what the reality is?
yeah.
That's amazing. So, what else I find fascinating about the timing of you and I meeting today and you describing that is that I've been a meditator for many years. Oh, I also wanted to ask before I get into that, how long ago was this? Like about what year was it that this started happening?
It's not that long ago.
Really?
About 3 years ago was
Okay.
when the kind of initial connection through meditation happened. I'd had some different beings make some contact before, and like I said, the mediumship, all that goes back a lot further.
Mhm.
But in terms with the direct voice channeling, and the strange thing with it was, unlike with mediumship, where I think I had to learn certain, it's almost like you had to learn the language, you had to learn how things are represented to you symbolically and how to kind of bring the information through. With the channeling, it just, once it was like, once the vibration was right and the consent was given and the time was right, it just happened. It's not,
Wow.
it didn't get any, it hasn't got increasingly profound. It's all quite profound. Some of the stuff, when I listen back to it, I just, it, it's altered my perspective on reality a lot. um but it was like, once I'd gone, yeah, okay, that's fine, we can bring this through, it just happens. The only
Mm.
thing I had to learn was really how to kind of allow my consciousness to step aside. So the first time I did like a platform event where there were lots of people watching, just overstepping those nerves enough to be calm enough to allow
Oh,
that to
sure.
come through. And once I was okay with that, then it just poured out. It was just all
Wow.
this stuff. I did so many sessions, to begin with, to really start to connect with it and find out what came through. But meditation, I think, was the integral point in how that was able to happen, because it was through that process that firstly I was able to make that connection and feel calm with it and know what the beings were, who they were, and that they weren't malevolent, and get to know them and how we were connected at soul level. And also in terms of opening up my frequency, opening up my heart space enough to step into that authenticity and to allow something of a higher frequency to come in, because I really felt like it wouldn't have happened had I remained in a lower vibration, which I had been in a few years previously. So it was like you kind of had to match, be at the right wavelength, essentially, to be able to do that. And meditation was such a key point in that. And I still use meditation a lot to remain connected and to get information from other sources and
Mhm.
um, messages as well.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and what I was starting to say before I asked you about how long you've been doing this is I feel so much resonance with what you're saying. And there's a reflection in my own experience is from as early as this morning, because I also am huge into meditation. This podcast actually used to be called Meditation Conversation. And it's
Right.
only been a little more than a year that I changed it to Soul Elevation because I wasn't really talking about meditation so much.
Yeah.
And but that's how it started. But anyway, it's been a really key factor in my own life. And then I also lead meditations with groups and teach meditation and so forth. Um, and just this morning, I was having such a different feeling when I was in my meditation. And it was just an energetic, like, perception of things in a new way. And I remember even thinking if I tried to describe how this is different than a normal meditation, I don't even know that I could, because it's so nebulous and there's
Yeah.
no like concrete, like, well, normally I breathe this way and the breath was happening,
Mm,
I felt this twitching in my shoulder, where there was nothing. It was just a feeling, but it was so palpable. It was so expansive. There was this something happening kind of in the actually the left hemisphere of my brain, funnily enough, because I think of the right side more as the connection with creativity, and the
mm,
left brain I see as so logical. So I was like, oh, interesting that I can perceive something happening on the left side. But anyway, I did feel that there was some sort of connection or some sort of presence, but it was also a part of me. Like, it wasn't different than me.
mm.
Anyway, I wondered about the timing. I'm like, it's Monday morning and I'm just doing a regular personal meditation. And I wonder if this is going to be relevant later in the day. And here you are, it's 3 hours later. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think that was kind of a reflection of what you're explaining. I wasn't channeling, and I didn't, didn't necessarily feel like new insights were coming in or anything, but it was very like, there were a lot of reflections of what you just talked about in
Yeah.
terms of how it came in that experience. And I'm just blown away. Like, oh my
I think we so frequently psychically connect through the field with people that we're about to be in contact with.
yeah.
I still do one-to-one sessions for people, and quite often I'll get certain feelings come through, not even deliberately focusing on it, and I have to think like, okay, is this for me? Is this for them? And I think that happens to us a lot. Like, how many
Yeah.
people have had the experience where they think about someone and they phone them, right?
Yeah.
I I think we tune in a lot more than we realize, and it's when we make it conscious that it gives us access to something different. It opens up doors. It becomes something that we can weave into our lives in a useful way and in an expansive way.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like that's how my life in particular works a lot more, is that I
Yeah.
will start to experience something, or I'll get information and I don't necessarily know it's for somebody else, or why it's coming in, but it is
Mm,
something, whether it's telepathic, whether it's tie in a connection with somebody in a deeper way that I haven't even met yet, or however it comes in. And then it's in hindsight that I'm like, "Oh,
yeah.
that's what that was," rather than, like, I was just talking about this yesterday on somebody else's podcast, and I was like, I wouldn't call myself psychic. Like, somebody called me psychic, and I was like, it just sort of like took me aback, because I don't feel like I am, because
Mm,
I could never, like, well, let me not put a limit on it, but I don't feel that I have any I don't have one-on-one sessions with people from, like, to give readings, if you know
mm,
what I mean. Like, I can tap
yeah.
in intuitively and give
Yeah.
it's more like, here's what I'm sensing about this and here's what I would do, sort of thing. Here's
Yeah.
what I would advise. Um, but I wouldn't be comfortable saying, "Oh, this is what's coming down the road for you,"
Yeah.
or anything like that. And that's what I think of with psychic. Like, "Oh, you have
Yeah.
this ability you can tap into on demand to be able to provide information." But I definitely get these things that happen, and in hindsight, I'm like, "Oh my goodness." So there's like a lot of synchronicity and things
Mm,
like that, but that has also helped me to expand my definition and perception
yeah.
of psychic skills and things like that. But
And I think when you're doing a lot of meditation, because I was doing so much of it as well when the channeling kind of first came through, um, you open up to so many synchronicities. That higher vibration just opens you up in such a weird way. In fact, this is a strange little story about one of the biggest synchronicities that I found. So this meditation group that I started came about during the lockdowns,
mhm.
because there was a bunch of people that I knew. We were all not quite comfortable with the narrative around things, um, but rather than wanting to kind of take any kind of forceful approach, we were like, what if we do some intention meditation? We focus this meditation um, just on the idea of awakening, opening up the heart chakra, just connecting, like letting whatever we feel truth, whatever is helpful to us to come through. But the way that I connected with these people was because there was a documentary that went round at the time, kind of at the beginning of like when COVID first came into the news. And this documentary was a lot to do with kind of hidden agendas behind it. Anyway, I sent that out to a bunch of people because I watched it. It was like, everyone needs to kind of see this. This is really interesting. And it was the response for it was that particular thing getting passed around that um, connected me with these people. And that's how we started the meditation group. And so that the meditation group is what led to me then channeling. So then, like 3 years later, or maybe it was more than that, but anyway, I started an Instagram account for the work that I'm doing now, which I'd resisted for ages, resisted social media for ages, but I started an account and I had like 40 followers. I'd been on there for like 3 weeks. And someone reached out to me because they'd seen the account, listened to some of the insights, and said, did I want to do an interview? So we did. And then we kind of stayed in touch. And then about a year later, I found out that this person was one of the key researchers on that initial documentary.
Oh, wow.
So the thing that got me channeling actually
Yes.
became my first kind of platform. And it was quite a big platform as well. So it was
Wow.
like suddenly, what, out of nowhere? I'm connected to all these people and just doors just flew open. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so that was quite
I love
amazing
it.
how that came through.
Yes, yes, that's amazing. So you've kind of hinted, well, you've flat out told us about how important meditation has been for you. You've given a little bit of insight into the timing. I'd like to go, I'd like to learn more about your kind of origin story in terms of your spiritual awakening and what has kind of led you to this work that you haven't shared yet.
So, as a child, I had a lot of experiences. Loads of people have, I know, but we had houses where there was phenomena. Things turning on, unusual noises.
And did you grow up in Cornwall? Because you're in Cornwall, England
No, I
now.
grew up in the southeast in Surrey, so nearer
Oh,
London.
okay. So I lived in Basingstoke for a few years,
Oh, okay.
a long time ago. So not the same sort of area, but
No,
ish, you know.
yeah, I went to Guildford College, so it's not actually
Oh, no
that far from that kind
kidding.
of area. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, my husband's English. He's from Hertfordshire,
Okay. Yeah.
and we lived in Hampshire and well in Basingstoke,
Oh,
and
Hampshire. Some of Hampshire's beautiful. I
it
like
yeah.
Winchester is one of my favorite places in
Oh, so
England.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Basingstoke is, I mean, I love Basingstoke because I have that connection there. But, as far as beauty, the countryside is really
Yeah,
beautiful.
you haven't got to go far, have you? And you can be
Right.
amongst, like, that kind of real old world.
Right. And so
Yeah.
now you're in Cornwall, which
Yeah.
is kind of, would that be considered kind of the Avalon area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, some people think Glastonbury, I mean, everyone's trying to claim a part of that
Yeah.
story.
Uh huh.
There's a lot of mythos around this area of Cornwall. There's an island called Tintagel Island, which is a couple of miles from my house. And it's not really an island, like a bridge goes over to it, but,
Hmm.
it was. And it was fortified back in the kind of dark ages. And there's a lot of mythology surrounding that connected to King Arthur.
Okay.
I know Freddie Silver has
I
been
just
over.
had him on. It's not been released yet, but I love
Really?
Freddie. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I know he's been here because he made a whole documentary about it in like 2014,
Oh,
15,
no
something like
kidding.
that.
I wonder if it's on Gaia. I
I think it is. It's called Otherworlds.
Okay, I
I
might
think.
watch that
Yeah.
tonight.
Oh,
Other
it's great.
Worlds. Okay.
And he mentions a place called Rocky Valley, which is right by my house.
Ooh.
And there's another place called St. Nectan's Glen, which more people know about. But actually, Rocky Valley is all part of the same river system. And there are uh, Bronze Age carvings there. And Freddie Silver actually, in that documentary, he talks about how up by the cliffs at Tintagel, there's a churchyard there, and there are a couple of barrow tombs, and they got excavated. And the peculiarity was that they found that the body had been taken, but all the treasure was left there. So it was obviously a chieftain, some kind of important character, but they had taken the body. So, the question mark was then was, well, was this the character something to do with Arthur?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was because, the body was like the sacred thing. Um, and yeah, it's a great documentary that Freddie's made there. It's worth kind of looking into, and I know he's developed a lot from that since that was made.
Oh, wow. I
So
literally just edited his podcast
that's incredible.
yesterday, so I'm just loving I love these synchronicities, of course.
Yeah.
I just because I feel like I was just with him again because our interview was like an hour and a half, and I just edited all
Wow.
of it yesterday, so
He's fascinating, isn't
oh my
he?
gosh, he's amazing. Yeah. Wow, so was that what kinda drew you to that area, that mythology and that,
So
like,
no,
energy?
we'd been coming since I was a little girl because my great grandparents used to live down here.
Oh.
Um, but as a kid, when I used to walk across the Tintagel cliff tops, I would always feel this real sense of, it would seem like a kid's imagination, imagining that. And I'd always kind of see myself as like this priestess working on spells and stuff like that. And I know it sounds very childlike now, but actually it was so vivid and the same every single time.
Mm,
And there was this one particular cave under the island. There's one that Freddie talks about in the documentary that is supposed to realign the masculine and feminine energies of the body as you go through it. But there's another one that I always felt that there was kind of magic and stuff happening in. So I think there was maybe some kind of karmic connection with the land anyway, and I was
mhm.
always kind of made to come back here. So I lived in Australia for a few years, and when I came back from there, that's when I moved to Cornwall.
Okay.
So Surrey's it's pretty, but it's very busy, and it's changed a lot since I was a kid too. So Cornwall is quite steeped in magic and mystery, and um, it's quite old worldy in terms of the energy.
And it's
It's
just
funny because
beautiful. It's
yeah,
amazingly beautiful there.
yeah, it is. It's
Mhm.
really it's so different. Anyone that comes to England from overseas, that you can go to like London and see that part of England. It's nothing like Cornwall.
Right.
They're worlds apart, and the people are totally different as well.
Mhm.
So I think that I was kind of maybe pulled back to this area. I don't necessarily, you never know how permanent that is. I think we get called to work in different places depending on where our energy is being aligned. But it's beautiful here and we love it. So
Mhm.
I can't remember where we were
Well,
initially.
yeah, I'm sorry. We were talking about your spiritual awakening. So you were
Oh yeah,
talking about, like, when you were little and you had some experiences as a child and things like that.
yeah, yeah. We would have phenomena in the house. Some houses it was very playful and easygoing, and there were a couple of others where it was a little darker and I was kind of uncomfortable. But again, I didn't know how to direct it. I don't know how to kind of use it or work with it. And then there were a couple of things that happened that were where they weren't scary, like nothing bad happened, but it was feelings from people that passed over, basically,
Mm.
that were really, really unpleasant, and I didn't really know how to kind of navigate that. And as with so many people that are kind of sensitive and sense spirits and stuff, it can be difficult, especially when you become a teenager, because you have so many different um, things to kind of deal with on the emotional level anyway. And then you shut down. You don't want to tell anyone about the stuff that you experience in that sense because it gets ridiculed. So you just go quiet and you shut it down for a few years. So then when I was in my early 20s, I went and lived in Australia and I met quite a few people that were like more connected to spirituality. So that I kind of started meditating. And that kind of put me back into that connection in a more positive way than just like, oh, there's loads of stuff going on around me and I don't really know what to do with it. And then I really, in my mid 20s, kind of went through the dark night of the soul, went through quite a difficult time. But during that time, I was doing a lot of psychic development. I had a cafe and we held a psychic development circle at that cafe. And the medium who started teaching me, she was excellent as a teacher. She always said she was put here to teach. She wasn't put here to do big platform or anything. She did a bit of that stuff, but she was really put here to show other people how to do it. And that awoken a lot of my ability, and also showed me how to use it, showed me how to actually read people. And I was quite amazed with some of the stuff that I was able to bring through, because I'd never really tried. I knew that there was ghosts and spirits and stuff, but I never actually really tried to connect and get information from them.
Mm.
So that changed things. And then I discontinued with the cafe, and everything kind of took a different direction.
Mhm.
And shortly after that, COVID happened. So it was weird for me, though, because I could see the world kind of, from a lot of people's perspective, it was crumbling. But I was going through this huge ascension process and finding everything more enlightening. And I know that a lot of people did kind of have awakening during that time, but often started from a rocky path.
Mhm.
uh, but I guess that's the same for a lot of people. You have to maybe have some of that instability, um, so that you can kind of connect with people that that you then move into in the future, that maybe are also having that process. Like, how can you guide somebody through something if you've never trodden walked in their shoes?
Yeah, right. Wow, I love that. That's amazing. So I want to talk about, because you have brought up kind of ghosts and the mediumship and so forth. What have you learned from the higher vibrational beings, or if it's from, the sessions that you've had? But I'd love to talk about the reincarnation process and
Mm,
how our incarnations interlink. Are there things you can share about that?
yeah, this was one of the kind of subjects that was a bit of like a red pill moment when I started doing it. Because when you do conventional mediumship, you're talking to the spirits that have passed over as though they are maybe uh, like it's the entirety of the soul of that person. And just the connection is really very different. I'll go into what the Pleiadians have kind of brought through, because that will explain this a little better. So yeah, it was, some of it took me a while to integrate it, to actually accept that maybe my perceptions before had been constructed by hundreds of years of ideas about death and about rebirth. And so I'd always kind of believed in reincarnation. But one of the first things that I started to learn from the Pleiadians was the idea of non-linearity. And non-linearity is obviously, in terms of time, is incredibly difficult to get your head round as a human, because we experience linearity as part of the human experience, so that we get the most out of the human experience, and so that we learn the most from it. um, so they taught me that incarnation is more like it's more like an explosion of energy. So if you imagine that there's 12 different layers of frequency, although they have said that they know that there's more and it continues to grow, but this is like as much as they can see for now. um, but then there's this 13th layer, and that 13th layer is like the creative energy. So it's the creative consciousness, it's source energy. And the fact that it's the 13th layer is a lot to do with the way that the number 13 has been inverted as well, so that we don't choose to connect with it.
Mm.
And that from that 13th layer, there's like an explosion, that or an outburst of energy, which then filters down through the 12 different layers of frequency. And it's like, if you sift flour, the more you sift it, the more separated it becomes. So the lower down in the frequencies, the more sifting there has been through the layers, the more separated that being is from source. So it takes more to lift vibration, it takes more to actually remember that connection, and that we are part of that energy. We are all just part of that same energy. And so by the same token, they're saying that all these different incarnations that we experience are all happening at once. So if you're remembering an incarnation from medieval times, it's actually at the quantum level happening now. And the reason that we often remember certain aspects of incarnation at a specific time is because there is something that is energetically affecting our life in this moment. And so, even just sometimes recognizing that will disconnect that, so that we don't negatively impact either incarnation, because one will reverberate, one will
Hmm.
mirror the other. Again, we get into that sense of mirroring. Two experiences can be very similar. And hence why then also there are many people having memories of Atlantis and memories of Lemuria or connections to Pleiades at this time, because the energy is the strongest between those particular events in our perceived time and what we're experiencing now.
Oh my
So
gosh. You are so blowing my mind. And I'm so sorry because I feel like I keep interrupting you, but I'm
it's
like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe you're talking about this because I have just in this month, this ancient Greek priestess life has shown up
yeah.
in a multitude of ways. And so it wasn't just like one event that I was like, "Oh, okay, somebody told me I had this ancient Greek, it's been like internal and but also all these synchronicities that have shown up and people bringing me information unknowingly and I'm like my mind already is blown from that. But
That's so great.
like so many things of what you're saying apply to the experience that I've had because there has been this like not only noticing all the synchronicities and like putting them together and also these inner remembrances within me, but that the nonlinear aspect of time and
Mm,
how even though this is from antiquity and I don't know the date, there was a point actually when I had like a number come through of like how long ago it was, and now I can't remember. I don't even remember if I wrote that down. But um, I had this realization that she is living now and can tap into this future version of her and how mind blowing, even though she's a priestess, so she's like living all of this, but there's also this like surreal aspect from her of this woman from the future in this foreign place that doesn't exist as far as she knows and that kind of it's like surreal for me and there's this like and it like blows my mind but then also thinking of it from her perspective and then also the kind of welcoming in of like
mm,
okay I know that you have gifts and also maybe I have gifts that can help with what might be happening with her right now and kind of this openness of like if there are ways that I can help you, I give access and vice
yeah.
versa and all of this. So anyway, I'm just so grateful for what you're sharing and that sifting. I got so many chills when you're talking about the sifting. I've never thought about it like that before and the separation because there's this
Mm,
like when I think of sifting, it's like this it's fine. It's getting
yeah.
finer and finer and finer. But there's this separation. There are all these new units that are
Yeah.
separate. So much of what you said, you're blowing me away. And again, so sorry to interrupt you, but I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
No,
So
it's cool. I love how these memories come back to us, and they are. I think they're essentially memories. And another thing that dropped in recently, connected to that, was I was kind of asking them about whether like magic, as in fantasy and fairy tale and stuff, like where does that actually come from? And they said it's not imagination. Like really, you don't have imagination. What you have is connections to other dimensions and connections to other experiences. You remember those experiences and then your imagination writes them into it's like your mind is processing it in a way that it can construct a reality around it. But that also, because so many of us observe by watching, reading, listening to fantasy stories or whatever, we we project our consciousness onto that. So even if it's not already created in another dimension, we are creating it by paying our attention into it. And that's where that non-linearity really shows you how the timelines are all interwoven, these dimensions are all interwoven. And the other one of the other things that they taught me about the process of dying, essentially, was that firstly that haunting, when a spirit feels like it's stuck or left behind, this was one of the things that was quite hard for me to take, really, was that spirit that's left behind. It's like just the egoic layer, like a holographic kind of imprint of the personality, and that the soul doesn't get stuck and trapped. So when there's a ghost that's stuck in a building, yeah, that to a degree there is an energy stuck there. That's not like saying that that's not real, but they were kind of saying you don't need to worry so much that a soul is trapped, because the soul knows what to do. The soul will continue to the next incarnation. um it's just sometimes, if like the death, especially if the death has been traumatic, the energy, so like it's like it kind of separates a little bit. The ego is connected to the human experience, which is why that's the part that remains. um and because if the death has been traumatic, the next kind of experience, or the next frequency created, could be lower, because it's been created from a place of fear. So the reason for like releasing spirits, releasing that egoic layer, is almost so that it can kind of send the message back to the soul that actually you don't need to be in fear anymore. Let's go. We can move out of this and shift into a higher frequency, because they explain that um, whatever experience we have after our physical body finishes is created by the kind of frequency, the vibration that we're in at the point of death. So a lot of people are actually in quite joyful states, and you hear of like sudden lucidity with people that have had dementia or Alzheimer's, and they're aware of their loved ones. They're talking about their families. So for the most part, the experience to move on is created in a higher vibration. Which is where, when people have NDEs, they get that kind of euphoric feeling. But that when it's created from a point of fear, they can also experience what we would perceive as, hell-like kind of dimensions, but they won't remain stuck there. Um, because as soon as we are removed from the human body, our perception changes rapidly. So you might briefly be in a place that feels like a kind of lower dimension, but the perspective changes so quickly once it's removed from the body that it's able to lift itself up and out. But sometimes when a being is, when there's the experience of haunting, the process of sending that being to the light is like allowing for the creation of a higher vibrational frequency for the soul's point after that.
And then
Sorry
it
if that
kind
was
of
complicated.
absorbs,
Sorry.
the lower, like that holographic,
Um,
or does it
No,
dissipate,
it's
or
more
how do
like
you?
it's like a connection of information, really, I think.
Oh,
I
okay.
I haven't got it completely kind of figured out
Mapped out.
with it
Yeah.
yet, because, sometimes the information that comes through is such a concept, that then trying to construct it into a way that we can perceive it
Yeah.
is
That
hard
makes
for me, even
sense.
though I've got the kind of drop in.
Yeah.
So, and they've added to the knowledge of that. That's like my kind of most recent whole version of it that I've got. But when I first started getting those insights, all they kind of said was really, that that it's like the egoic layer that gets left behind in a haunting. They didn't explain how it connects to how we create the next experience that we have, and also the next experience that we have again is only a perception, because the time is nonlinear. So that
Mm,
experience that we have with ourselves after we've died is happening at the same time as the living body.
right.
Which is
Yeah, it's
tricky.
very it's very mind bendy, isn't
Yeah.
it? Oh my goodness. Well, okay, so I know that you are an energy translator, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I love this, and that's not something that you hear very much. So, in terms of, well, at least I don't. I don't hear people who relate to themselves in that way. So, I'd love to get a little bit more insight about what does that entail? What does that mean to you?
I guess it's it. It's I say a translator might be a bit generous because half the time it's convoluted and I get confused with what I'm trying to translate. But essentially, it's, bringing through, like, channeling is that's an energy, the consciousness is coming through and you kind of just sharing thoughts and putting it out over the same frequency. But when it's concepts that come through in meditation that are highly visual and experiential and they drop into the body, and then bringing that message forward and what that means, that I suppose is the kind of point of like the part that is translation.
Mhm.
um and I'm sure there are parts that get lost in translation with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there is I mean, especially when you're dealing with energy, it there is so much to it, and there are so many nuances and layers, and so I find a lot of times when I'm trying to convey something, I'm like I just want to, like, take all of there's so much all at once, and I wish I could, like,
Yeah.
packet it, like, make it into a packet and just send it to somebody
Yeah.
because I'm like, "Where do I start?" You know? It's
Yeah.
like that experience that I was talking about with the Greek, and the Greek ancient life that came through, and it was like there's so many layers, there's
Yeah.
so much time around it. It goes forward in time, it goes backward in time, it goes to an earlier part of my life,
Hmm.
but then it goes back to, and that I just want to take it, wrap it up, and be like, here, here, just take it and, and understand it, so
Yeah.
that I don't have to try to find the words that go with it.
I mean, so I do like soul activation sessions with people, and essentially that's like kind of taking them into a meditation and taking them through. So rather than me just trying to look into their past life and then tell them this is what or like whatever's going on, this is what's going on. um, I'll do it with them, and I try and get people so they will do the meditation with me. It's very guided, very visual, so that they can see that stuff for themselves, and I'll see
Mm.
parts of it too, and to teach somebody how they can read how their soul is talking to them, so that
Oh, I
you get
love
those
that.
kind of meditations like you're describing that you had this morning, and it's a way of helping to interpret what that actually means and how you can communicate with it and how you can then take your experience further.
Ooh, that's amazing. So I'm curious, as we're recording this, and it does take me a little bit of time to release these episodes. So by the time it's out, we'll probably be in December or January. But as we're recording this, it's in mid-November of 2025. And last week, we had a ton of solar flares. There was so much solar activity. There was so much geomagnetic activity. And we had a lot of northern lights that were
Mm.
able to be seen in places that they aren't normally seen. And I'm curious, it felt to me like such a potent time and kind of a pivotal time.
Mm.
Um, and I would love to know if the Pleiadians or other higher dimensional beings have provided you any insight into last week or generally the shift that we're in.
Oh, yeah, I mean, they haven't spoken particularly about last week, but they've spoken a little bit about Three Eye Atlas, not hugely, because I think there's a lot of information about it out there at the moment anyway. But that essentially it's like a transmission station of waves of energy that are helping us to step into a more interconnected consciousness. And I'd noticed, and speaking to other people as well, people were having really vivid dreams over the last couple of weeks, and dreams that seemed to be carrying a higher meaning, not just something
Mhm.
kind of wacky, something that seemed to be information. And I think that is one of the ways that um, higher consciousness can bypass our subconscious, because when we're in the daytime, when we're awake, we receive some information, and a lot of people will just dismiss it and think that it's their imagination, whereas people tend to pay more attention to their dreams. And so it was like a way of kind of transmitting a collect the idea that our consciousness is collective, that we can actually tune into this field and start to perceive where certain events might be going. And they've always kind of said that a lot of the reason for the awakening process happening to so many people at the moment, and us feeling that we're shifting into a different frequency, is not coincidental. It's a lot to do with the movements of our planet through space, through our relationship to the sun, and through what's going on Gaia herself, and the different frequencies that she is kind of moving through and recalibrating, and what dimensions are able to be experienced within the Earth's plane. So dimensions that we wouldn't previously have made contact with, are now much more accessible to us and will increasingly become so. So they've kind of always talked about the timing, um, in terms of being the optimal point for this awakening process to happen,
Mhm.
and that also events within their own star systems, not just the Pleiadians, but like Sirius and Orion and stuff, they're in a calmer kind of place than they might have been a few 100,000 years ago, because the time passes very differently there. But because they're more stable, that's able to bring a more stabilizing energy, because everything that happens in any part of the cosmos, any part of the universe, has a nebulous connection with everything else, and so the frequency everywhere is affected. So when one place is more stable, the others are given the opportunity to move into that consciousness as well.
Mm, that's beautiful. I love that you brought Three Eye Atlas into that too, because I somehow I hadn't really thought about that in relation to everything, specifically with last week.
Mm,
And there, Three Eye Atlas is behind the sun right now.
yeah.
So, and the sun apparently is a big part of how Three Eye Atlas is working with the Earth. So that makes so much sense. And you
Mm,
just keep helping these to close these loops within me, or like gaps of where I'm not making the connections. So I'm so grateful. Um, with that in mind, and everything you were sharing about the increasing energy and the awakening and so forth, some people talk about a split,
yeah.
and that there are kind of, with the new earth, the old earth remains, and that we're going to be kind of there will be more and more two kind of experiences here on planet Earth. I'm starting to feel that more and more.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's accelerating, where there just seems like there's a bigger chasm between people who understand things from a
Yeah.
consciousness perspective and from a vibrational perspective, and can see how the grasping to kind of keep us at a certain level, and to control us and siphon and so forth. And those who cannot understand that,
Hmm.
and have no interest in understanding that, and
Mm,
want to stay in the system.
yeah.
What have they talked about, or what is your understanding about this?
They've all, since I've been channeling, they've always spoken, and before, even through messages and stuff, that they do see the split coming. They've said that a lot of the intervention, as in terms of consented intervention, where people have agreed to be channelers or agreed to bring through different kind of perspectives in certain ways, um, is because they can see that this is on the horizon for planet Earth, and they want the most amount of people possible to move into fifth dimensional consciousness, because each being that's in a higher frequency, by being in that higher frequency, the connection to source gets more apparent. We start to remember our own divinity, we remember our ability to create, and are more mindful of how our consciousness is projected. And once we're more connected in like that, we also start to perceive that when, I've got to think about the right way to put this, when an experience is of a high vibration, it creates an expansion in consciousness. When it's in a low vibration, it creates a contraction in consciousness. So when the majority of people are acting in ways that are in a low vibration, it continues to contract the consciousness. So it's essentially, it's preventing source energy, which we are all a part of, which is, well, we are completely that thing, it's within us. It's also restricting us, it's restricting our ability. Equally, it's restricting every thing throughout the cosmos, because there is a vibration, there is a resonance, and it will affect to a certain point. But when people are having experiences in a higher vibration, in a higher frequency, it creates expansion of consciousness. So it allows the universe to, in terms of an energetic consciousness, it allows it to create more. And the purpose is almost like always to create more abundance, to create more life, to create more knowledge. Um, and I mean knowledge as in a more kind of innate deep wisdom, rather than facts that you can run off of something. So the reason that they have this interest isn't like, you can look at another planet and think, well, why would you want to help them? Why have you got any concern as to what happens on that planet, apart from if they blow themselves up, which might have a physical impact on ours? Why would we bother? But that's because they're coming from that place of understanding that by our growth they grow too, by our understanding they gain more understanding too. And the more energies that are brought up into high vibration, then the less there is siphoning from lower vibrational energies of the higher ones. Therefore, everyone's able to kind of maintain a higher equilibrium.
Mhm.
So that's why they get involved. Um, they have said, they were saying at one point that they thought that kind of everyone might make the jump and the split. It was like they weren't kind of sure whether it would happen, and that the reason that there are so many galactic communities paying attention to Earth at the moment is because they've seen splits between like different planets on different star in different star systems, but never a dimensional split within one planet. So they're like
Mm.
totally fascinated by it. Just like, how is this? Like, how are you gonna live in two dimensions? And it's almost like they can't quite work out how it's going to play out. Watching two different dimensions where you're still occupying the same physical space, but your reality is completely different. So that, I think they're kind of watching that with some interest. They have said that some of there are like two, there's always two possible then experienced realities by every person, depending on where you put your energy, your focus, and your consciousness. So I did a channeling with somebody the other night. I'm going to release some of it in a few days, but they were talking about some of the political situations, and they were saying there are two paths in which this can play out. One where it's directed by projecting a lot of the frustration and anger towards certain groups, and because we're looking for something to blame the problems on, or looking for a solution. So it's like, is the solution to eradicate this group, or for want of a better kind of term, that's the third dimensional kind of play out of how that could happen. And some might experience it like that if they continue to be pulled into the feelings of anger and frustration, which of course we know there are elements of uh, like the media and governments that maybe want to kind of hold us down vibrationally, and going deeper than that as
Mhm.
well. But they were saying that there are so many people now that are moving into higher states of consciousness, and with the patterns that are happening from the sun, the cosmos, from Gaia, it's all conducive to lifting into higher vibration. And they were kind of getting at, you can't have that many people move into a higher vibration without lifting everything around it, because everything is
Mhm.
drawn to a higher vibration. It's never drawn to a lower vibration. And so it's much more expansive. So yeah, there may be like a small part where they kind of at soul level have chosen not to make that leap, because maybe they have more that they want to learn through the polarity experience. But that, because there is such a, it only takes a small amount in higher vibration, observing things for the most benevolent outcome, to start shifting everything else to move into alignment with that field.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, are you familiar with Dr. David Hawkins' work, Power versus Force?
um Is he the one that did the scale, the frequency scale?
Yes, the
Yes,
the
yeah,
yeah, the
a little bit,
consciousness.
not overly so.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing because this was decades ago that he did his research, and that is the basis of what he shares is, he not only has mapped out the scale of consciousness, and it
Yeah,
kind of looks like a pyramid where, the lower consciousness, there are a lot more people who operate at the lower levels of consciousness, and fewer the higher up you go until you get to kind of the top of enlightenment or whatever he calls it. And there are, very few operating at that level, but the very top has such a higher frequency influence over the bottom. So I can't remember now I want to say it's something like one person operating at, even in the middle of the triangle, even at like, I am kind of just spitballing this, but 500, which isn't
Yeah.
enlightenment. That's still, you still have a ways to go before enlightenment. But even at that level, that offsets like thousands, tens of thousands of people operating at the bottom, and not even the very, very bottom, but like, I think it starts at maybe 20. And he was like, I want to say that it was, that offsets people at 150,
Yeah.
by tens of thousands, one
Yeah.
person operating at that level. So like I'm just relating that to what you're saying, because they completely reinforce each other. Like what the
Yeah.
Pleiadians are saying is exactly also what he was saying decades ago, but that's also kind of mind blowing what he
Yeah.
came up with so long ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredible. You can almost see like the pyramid flipping now, that's going to
Yeah.
be the kind of inversion, but the inversion is like the lighter side of it.
Right. Yeah. When you think of it from a frequency perspective and the power of it,
Mm,
you can totally flip that, because you can have the few who are operating at that higher frequency and the power that they have, the
yeah.
influence, without even realizing it, perhaps, where
Yeah.
they really just want to feel right within themselves. They like that feeling of of alignment, and I think that there are plenty of people who are doing that and not even realizing
Yeah.
what they're offsetting
I
just by
think
living
that's
that
where
way.
that intention focused meditation is so powerful too, because you move your state into a higher frequency before you begin, and then you're just sending out a frequency. You're not trying to change people's minds. If they want to
Mhm.
allow that frequency to resonate through them, then they will do so.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh my goodness, I have loved every second of this, Jessica. This has just been amazing. Please
Thank you.
tell us how people can connect with you and learn more.
Sure. I have my website, which is jessicataylorintuitive.net. I post up previous channelings, links to podcasts and things like that. You can book one-to-one sessions, and I also host uh, live platform events. So you can just buy a ticket to that. You can email your questions through beforehand. So they'll be posted ticket links onto the website, but also follow me at Jessica Taylor Intuitive on Instagram, because I post any news of events, any new work that I've got released and stuff. That's where you'll see it first. So check it out on there as well.
Beautiful. And you have a couple of things coming up with to Ascension next year. Is that
I
right?
do, yeah. I can't remember the specific dates, but it's a couple of platform things through there. So if you follow Portal, which I'm sure there'll be some of your listeners will do, they'll be posting events, and I'll be doing platform work with them on a couple of the panels and things like that, as well as some other podcasts and media.
Beautiful. Yeah, Portal to Ascension is a friend of the show, so I know that people will be familiar with their work and excited to see you on there.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. It's such a blessing to connect with you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the work that you're doing to elevate consciousness.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Soul Elevation. If someone in your life would be inspired or uplifted by what you heard today, please take a moment to share it with them. These are the kinds of conversations that ripple out and elevate collective consciousness. And if you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the powerful episodes ahead. Your presence, energy, and support truly help amplify this mission of raising frequency and anchoring in a more awakened humanity. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you for the next episode of Soul Elevation.